Are you picking the over that this year's summer box office is going to be a success, or are you picking the under and saying that this year is about to be a disaster in terms of summer blockbusters? That's the question I am here to answer today. My name is Ben Friedman, and today we are talking the overs and unders of this year's summer box office. So 2 weeks in to May, we've already got one flop guaranteed. Today, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes released. This is Friday, May 10th when I recorded it. So by the time this video releases Sunday, maybe we have two flops. I don't think that's going to be the case, but we already have one big flop in the Fall Guy. I have 10 movies that I think will be the top 10 highest grossing films domestically this summer box office. And essentially, I'm going to have an over and under for each one. And it allows me to talk about all of these summer blockbusters. So let's just get started because we have 10 that we have to talk about today. And this is a tricky list because I felt good about 3 to 4. Feel pretty solid on maybe 5 through 8. Last 2 spots are a little weird. And even some of the other ones I'm just still not positive on. So we're going to be talking about it today. Coming in at number 10. And I just want to say there were 4 films in the running for number 10. I have John Krasinski's If, which is the Imaginary Friends movie releasing next week. I have also semi-tied to John Krasinski, but not an actual Krasinski film, A Quiet Place Day 1, which will release in June. I have Alien Romulus, which does get August, basically, if not all to itself, pretty empty for it. And then I have Borderlands, the Eli Roth movie that's been in production hell for a while, $75 million budget. This isn't looking great for Borderlands. But let's talk about it. So coming in at number 10 of those 4, I selected A Quiet Place Day 1. Here was my logic. Quiet Place franchise has been strong for the past 2 installments. I understand that John Krasinski is not returning. I understand that Emily Blunt, who was a big appeal from these past 2 movies, is not returning. It doesn't even fully look like A Quiet Place just due to how much noise is in the trailer. But here's what I was looking at. I believe that any film that is going to make the top 10 domestic box office earnings this summer has to cross this amount of approximately $120 million to be in the top 10. How I got that number is I looked through the past 10 years, and that was generally the lowest side you saw of it. There are outliers in there, specifically 2020 and 2021. Obviously, why those are outliers, it's not a shock. But so that meant that if I believe that A Quiet Place could get to solidly maybe about 130 domestic gross, then it had a chance to make this list. So do I think that? And here's the first part of this over-under. I got 160 million domestically. That is the gross earning domestically of A Quiet Place Part 2. So do I think this film is going to get close to that amount? And for my first pick, I'm saying the under. I think when the summer is over, we are going to be seeing A Quiet Place earn less than 160 million domestically, but that might not be a big issue. I believe that since this is kind of its own spin-off within this franchise, new characters, I don't think Lupita Nyong'o is such a huge draw. I think that this film could still solidly earn somewhere around 130 to 160. I think there's a lot of success in that. But for this first one, we are starting with an under. So my official prediction is A Quiet Place Day 1 will come in at number 10 and will be less than 160 million domestically to start this list. Number 9, this one's an exciting film to talk about, and I've been really excited to just kind of dive into this, and I've made allusions to this film already on this channel, how excited I'm getting for this movie, and it is Kevin Costner returning to the Western genre with Horizon, an American Saga, Chapter 1. Some people are looking at me crazy. They're like, Ben, why would you put this film in the top 10? This is a huge risk, and I would have thought so earlier. But I'm less and less positive that this is going to be a financial disaster like I had originally believed it to be. I had originally believed giving Costner this type of money to make this type of film was a disaster waiting to happen. I was corrected that it sounds like the budget is $100 million for both films, which means each film is a $50 million budget. And it seems like some people are tying the box office earnings for both films to tie back into one film. Little confusing, but that's kind of how my understanding of it is going to work. So it's essentially going to be like Horizon Part 1, Horizon Part 2, but it's all counting for the same type of marketing, budgeting. So it comes in a little softer at that. Box office earnings, or what I should say, financial spending on this doesn't matter, because for all we know, this film could have like a $500 million budget, and if it doesn't gross back $1 billion, it could make 700 domestically and still be a failure for the studio. So we're not really talking about that. That was just one interesting piece of context that kind of changed my mind a little bit on Horizon. The real big thing is, here's why I am putting my eggs in the basket of Horizon. I am picking this for middle America. White, older moviegoers. They're centric, maybe a little bit leaning conservative demographic. And the thing that keeps coming up in my head while picking this movie in particular was last year's phenomenon of Sound of Freedom, which I think is solely a phenomenon. And I don't think any film is going to be able to replicate, and that is pretty unexplainable. I don't think that's going to become the norm. However, I do believe that does show an appetite for a film that has maybe more of that centric / even right-wing conservative leaning. And again, I'm not saying Kevin Costner is a right-wing filmmaker, but I think there is certainly something of this film that appeals to the Midwest. And if you look at some of the other films, you have Magnificent Seven, which grossed $93 million domestically back in 2016. So there is a little bit of an appetite for these Western films. Revenant grossed $183 million domestically back in 2015, but really largely within 2016. But here's the big thing that I keep focusing on. Yellowstone is the most watched scripted show on TV. That's a big deal. And you can make the argument, and it's a fair argument, it's a fair con against me, that TV audience will not show up to the movies. And just because you're the king of the TV shows until you left your show because of ego, that doesn't affect your bottom line earnings as a filmmaker. I think Kevin Costner definitely has a certain amount of sway that he still brings. I think this type of film could appeal to a lot of audiences. And here's also the thing that I found interesting. This is an empty June for adults. You have Bad Boys Ride or Die coming out June 7th. The same day as Horizon, you have A Quiet Place Part 1. But then besides that, it's Despicable Me 4 to kick off July. And then no other real big release until Twisters, which will be July 19th. So you kind of got this window to just be the film that middle America goes to if they're not going to a kid's film or they're not really interested in this Quiet Place horror vibes franchise. I think that's important. And that's why I'm putting a little bit more belief in Kevin Costner here for Horizon and American Saga Chapter 1. The cons against it, of course, are fair. Part 1 has been a huge trigger warning for some audience members. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 struggled last year at the box office, so that's something to know. So there is certainly a fear of putting the Part 1 in front of your basically marketing for this movie. I'm kind of just betting on middle America here to show out. And I feel like one of these films will be kind of a surprise. And I think it could very well be Yellowstone. Sorry, not Yellowstone. Well, that's the issue. It's going to be Horizon. That's my prediction. And before I move on from Horizon and American Saga Chapter 1, let's do the over-unders on this. I picked the two films that I had already mentioned already. Sound of Freedom at $184 million domestically. I am going to say the under on Horizon Chapter 1. If it succeeds and gets to that number, Warner Brothers is very happy. Magnificent Seven 93 million, I'll pick the over on it. So I'm going to say that this film probably ends up somewhere right over 100 million, maybe that 100 to 140 million range, I think is in play for Horizon. Keyword, if it's good. If it's not good, well, then this pick looks really stupid. Coming in at number 8, we got, and reviews have just started dropping for this film. I saw a bunch of reviews coming yesterday. Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga. What are the pros for this film? Mad Max Fury Road made 153 million domestically in 2015. There is nothing cannibalizing itself the week that Furiosa comes out. The only other thing coming out before it is If the week before, and Garfield releasing the week of Furiosa. So both kids' movies, I don't think the audiences are the same. And at this point, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes will have a 2-week separation from Furiosa. So if you're looking at it, Furiosa will have one weekend, and then the following weekend, and then that following weekend, then you get Bad Boys 4 on June 7th. That's a lot of space for Furiosa to really just build momentum. Rave reviews so far, especially with all the stunts and spectacle. I think that's actually a big key too. I feel like a film that really promotes the idea of stunts and spectacle, that you have to see it on the big screen to really absorb and feel the physicality of the film, I think will play to Furiosa's benefit, especially because my guess would mean that's getting 2 weeks of uninterrupted IMAX screens, which will certainly help it. And if you look at it, it's tracking anywhere around where Fury Road opened, which was $45 million. Here's the struggle that Furiosa may have, and it's a fair negative assessment of Furiosa Mad Max Saga. Fury Road's budget was somewhere between $160 to $180 million, and now this movie will probably be a similar size budget. In fact, I might even guess bigger size budget. But now it's a prequel for the breakout supporting actress from Fury Road, who made the role popular, now being cast with a brand new actress. Kind of think Solo and Lightyear. You remember how that went? This trailer looks bad. I've seen this trailer played a lot of times, and I'm excited for this movie, but that trailer is doing no help in promoting that movie. And common criticisms I've heard of this movie, even though I've continuously hearing critics call it spectacular and amazing and breathtaking and just visceral, I'm also hearing people be like, well, the length and pacing's a little weird in this movie, and it's very methodical, and it works. But what I hear is length and pacing being an issue with this movie, or at least being something that people could perceive as an issue to this movie. That gets me a little worried. So here's what I think might happen. I think Furiosa may underperform, but I think it will make enough money to put itself at number 8 for this domestic box office this summer. I have the over and under for this film set to what Mad Max Fury Road made domestically, which is 153 million. I think Mad Max Fury Road was a phenomenon, and I'm going to take the under on this. So somewhere south of 150. So that's my prediction for Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga. Let's go to number 7. This might be a little low. I'm a little worried I went too low on this pick. It actually comes out the same weekend as Furiosa, and it is the animated kids alternative to go to the theaters this week. I picked the Garfield movie to come in at number 7. Here's what my thought was. This is the first real animated kids movie of the summer. And I make it clear that it's animated because I know Imaginary Friends, the John Krasinski movie that comes out the week before, has CGI/animated characters, but it's still a live action film with Ryan Reynolds at the star. So I think Garfield's the first real traditional kids movie coming out. It releases 5/24, and then if you look at it, Inside Out 2, which is its next biggest competition, releases 21 days later on June 14th. that 21 days allows Garfield a lot of time to essentially rack up money, especially because it will come out, it will have Memorial Day, and it will have kids getting off from school first week of June. Chris Pratt is a popular voice actor, popular kids actor, and I think this film is reminding me a lot of The Peanuts, which grossed $130 million domestically. That's my over-under for this. If I'm setting the line at $130 million domestically for these two cartoons based on older properties that still have some relevance with kids that are very famous for who they are, I think Garfield can perform higher than 130. So I'm picking the over on Garfield. And I really do just think the space that the Garfield movie has is going to really allow this film some time to grow. The negative against this movie will be this huge question mark of if. What is if going to do at the domestic box office? And what if becomes a sensation? Like legitimately people really like this film. It overperforms. Does this start cannibalizing itself into Garfield box office? Which it could. So I think with taking this bet at 7, I'm a little bit hedging my bets that in case if overperforms, but I'm also making the bet that I think if may underperform. So that's why I have this movie, Garfield the movie, or the Garfield movie at 7. Number 6. I switched this last second. Originally I had this at number 7. I moved Garfield to number 7. I got Bad Boys Ride or Die. This is the only type of this style of movie releasing this summer. There's no Fast and Furious movie. There's no Transformers movie. There's no other Michael Bay movie. There's no Men in Black movie. It is purely Bad Boys Ride or Die. Now, what's working against this movie is that it's no longer the 20-year wait for this movie. They made a movie a few years ago, right before everything shut down. And Will Smith's celebrity status has changed. He's probably not going to do the normal Will Smith press tour. It's probably going to be a little bit quicker, less long form interviews, maybe just a few like viral campaigns to try to build some buzz. And also Bad Boys Ride or Die is not coming out in January where there's not a lot of other competition. This is coming out in the summer, and the summer does get a little bit more packed. Now, here's why I'm a little bullish on where I'm picking Bad Boys Ride or Die. Bad Boys for Life made $206 million. That's a lot of money. Do I think Bad Boys Ride or Die will hit that $206 million domestically? I don't. I'd pick the under on that. However, look at some of the other Will Smith properties, and I'm specifically referring to the last big Will Smith summer that was not either Aladdin or Suicide Squad. That was Men in Black 3 in 2012. That film grossed $179 million. Is there just a chance that this film can be basically the only type of programming for older audiences, people who like Will Smith, people who like these types of action movies, coming up with a sequel that did really well a few years ago, that still has some staying power? And do I think it's going to hit 206 million? No, not really. But do I think it could perform about the same as Men in Black 3 at 179 million? I'm still going to pick the under, but I don't know how much under I'd go on it. I could very well see this film being in the 150 plus range, which is why I'm putting Bad Boys Ride or Die number 6 on this list. Number 5 is probably the biggest bet I am taking this year at the summer box office, and that is for Universal's only other real big release, Twisters. Why am I going this? Because I think a lot of people are going to maybe criticize me for this pick, and they're going to be like, no one cares about this 90s franchise. Well, guess what? I would probably agree with you. No one really cares about that. But how many people actually know that this was a film in the 1990s if you weren't born during that time? here's what I think is working in Twister's favor. It is a pure big budget disaster movie that will probably be worth experience on the big screen, possibly an IMAX screen, starring an actor who got a big boost from Anyone But You and Top Gun Maverick, and has Hitman, which is coming out to great reviews, could get another small star boost coming out in June. And that actor is Glenn Powell. So those are all working in this film's favor. The con of this is it is that resurrected franchise from the 90s, but do enough people care, or is that going to turn off some audiences? Like, we don't care about this. I think Twister exists in this weird world where the stars of that movie aren't really like A-list. So people don't like just automatically attach, like Independence Day, you attach that to Will Smith. I don't think people have that same relationship, even like with Armageddon, Bruce Willis, or Deep Impact, Morgan Freeman, where it's like almost so famous that they're in that movie. I think Twisters, I should say, has the advantage of it kind of can exist as its own thing. And I think people would like to see this type of spectacle on the big screen. The one other element that worries me about Twisters is the next weekend Deadpool and Wolverine comes out. So if this film even slightly underperforms, which I think there is a chance of doing, this could get eaten alive. And Deadpool and Wolverine could come in and its Twisters is doomed. And now that I say it, I almost want to move Twisters down to like 7. But I'm going to stick with it. So here's the numbers that I was looking at. San Andreas made $155 million domestically. That's the 2015 Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson film. I could see a world where Twisters hits this number and it actually goes above. And if the reviews are as positive as I've heard some people suggest this movie is, and this movie really does become a sensation, I think this is also the movie that has the most potential to just explode. Where maybe all of a sudden we're looking up and it's a $300 million domestic gross. Do I think that's going to happen? Probably not. But I think reviews could really play a big part of this. I think if the reviews are bad, people are going to be like, it's fine. I don't need to see this. If the reviews are really good, I could see like a real fervor for this, or people are just kind of going crazy and it kind of becomes a sensation. So the other one that I have for the over-under is Independence Day Resurgence, a disaster film kind of done poorly and all the worst ways possible, also a 90s property. None of the stars returning for that movie. Independence Day Resurgence 2016 made $103 million domestically. I will definitely go the over for Twisters. Twisters is also this weird one because studio success may be hugely in question for this movie. What if this movie cost $200 million? That's a very different scenario than Twisters costing $100 million. I don't know what the budget of Twisters is. Do want to just kind of notice that. And again, there is this negative of Deadpool 3 1 week later. Could this be a Mission Impossible where last year Mission Impossible came out, made respectable amount of money the opening weekend, and then next weekend was Barbenheimer, and everyone just like, that became the sensation of the year. Could Deadpool and Wolverine become that sensation? It's a great question to ask. Coming in at number 4, I have Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which came out this week, which again, I'm recording this on Friday. So people, you could be listening to this. You could be like, oh my God, how did he get that so wrong? What an idiot. I'm going just solely based off the Thursday numbers, which seem to be consistent with the rest of this franchise. The Planet of the Apes trilogy has been weirdly consistent. It's actually incredibly consistent for its track record. Good reviews for the most part, audience trust, overall financial consistency. Opening weekend for the previous 3 films were Rise of the Planet of the Apes, $54 million, Dawn, $72 million, and War for the Planet of the Apes at $56 million. And Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is currently trending to be somewhere around 50 to 55. Could this underperform? Could I see this maybe getting to 40, 45? There is a possibility of it. The early tracking for this, which again is just the Thursday showing of it, suggests that it is on pace to do Rise or War numbers, which is that mid-50s numbers. If you look at the domestic gross for these movies, $177 million for Rise of the Planet of the Apes, $208 million For Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, $146 million for War of the Planet of the Apes. War came out in an incredibly competitive 2017. If I recall, Spider-Man literally came out the week before, and I think there was another big blockbuster coming out the week after. So War was definitely in a more competitive space, where Kingdom kind of gets to just thrive for 2 weeks before Furiosa. And obviously with the Fall Guy falling flat, there is literally nothing that people are going to see. So Kingdom has that. Over under, I'm putting it at the Rise of the Planet of the Apes gross domestically, because what's my logic there? Well, this is kind of the first of this, not new franchise, but recontinuing of this franchise. I think an over of 177. I'm going to be kind. I'm going to take the over here on Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I'm saying over $177 million domestic. That brings us to number 3. And I think everyone who's kind of following along with this list knows there are 3, 2, 1. What's the order we are going to go for? 3, 2, 1 is it. But there's 3 films. Inside Out 2, Despicable Me 4, Deadpool and Wolverine. I feel like everyone is probably going to agree that's the top 3 at this point. So coming in at number 3, I have actually the 4th installment within this franchise, Despicable Me 4. Let's just look at the past earnings for this Despicable Me franchise. Despicable Me 3, $264 million, which was definitely the lowest of the Despicable Me, though still a very good amount for this franchise. Minions Rise of Gru, $370 million. I think the Rise of Gru number is a little inflated because this was really a big movie for kids to come back to after 2 years of kind of in lockdown and movies not coming out to theaters. I think people really just went out to go support Minions Rise of Gru. It has that July 3rd release date. First kids movie after Despicable Me 4 will be Harold in the Purple Crayon on August 2nd. Don't know how much business that's going to do. I'm definitely going to say not a lot. Transformers 1 is the next animated film coming out of any real note, September 20th. Despicable Me 4 could just have the entire summer, essentially, from July on to just go crazy. And if you think about it, Inside Out 2 comes out 18 days earlier, so Inside Out 2 will have its space. And I can't think of a real con for this movie that has any real substance to it. Despicable Me 2 grossed $368 million, and while 3 grossed about $100 million less than that, Minions 2 came out 4th of July weekend as well, and basically made back what Despicable Me 2 made, $370 million. So do I think this film will hit that number of Minions Rise of Gru, $370 million? I'd probably venture and say no. I don't think Minions Rise of Gru will hit 370. Sorry, I don't think Despicable Me 4 will make 370 million like Despicable Me 4 did. Do I think Despicable Me 4 will make more than Despicable Me 2 at 264? I feel safe enough making that bet. So I'm going to pick the over on this and say it's another case of programming to kids. Number 2, and I think we can all know both of these are top Disney movies, and Disney really needs a big summer here. Number 2, I am picking the only superhero installment on this list, Deadpool and Wolverine. What are the pros of this? Because people would be like, the MCU's kind of a disaster. Superhero movies seem to be having fatigue. Pros of this, only superhero movie this summer. There's no other competition. There's been no competition this year outside of Madam Web. Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman are willing to work the rooms. They got the fan club. They got Taylor Swift willing to do promotion with them. Is Taylor Swift in this movie? We've all heard those rumors. What if she's in the movie? Oh my God, that could be another however much. What if she has a big role in this movie? What if she has no role? But will those rumors continue circulating? Previous choose are very successful. End of July gives the film legs. July 26th is when it comes out. Next big release is August 16th, which I believe is Alien Romulus. There's a Borderlands movie in there, but I just don't know how that film's going to do. So that's kind of 21 days uninterrupted of movies that Deadpool and Wolverine will get. Deadpool, the first one, made $363 million. Deadpool 2 made $324 million. I know there's the MCU fatigue. I just don't think it's going to really play in Deadpool's against Deadpool. If it does and this film underperforms, well, you're going to see Disney and Marvel kind of panic. Deadpool and Wolverine, I'm putting the over-under at the gross of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which was the last film to really get close to that billion, grossed 955 worldwide, had a domestic gross of 411. Could Deadpool and Wolverine hit 411? I think the R-rated would probably imply no. But could Deadpool and Wolverine hit above 363, which is the domestic gross of the first Deadpool? Yeah, I think it can. So I'm going the under on Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness at 411 million. Going the over for 363 million for the first Deadpool. Which brings us to our last film that I want to talk about. The number one, the film that I'm saying is going to win this year's summer box office. Disney would be thrilled if this happened. Inside Out 2. Easy pitch. Sequel to a beloved Pixar film that adds new fun emotions while keeping the humor and spirit of what made the first installment really popular. It has so much space to breathe as Garfield/If are coming out in May. Despicable Me 4 isn't coming out till beginning of July. 2 to 3 weeks to just kind of itself. And here is the con. And everyone knows this con. Everyone's been talking about it. Pixar/Disney has trained audiences to wait for movies on Disney+. Elemental underperformed until it finally started earning its money back. But I still think it was probably a disappointment on what Disney had maybe really hoped for, or at the very least broke even. Lightyear disappointment. Turning Red disappointment. Luca disappointment. Wish disappointment. Wish big disappointment, actually. Raya and the Last Dragon underperformed. Strange Worlds underperformed. Encanto was the last big Disney animated film that performed big in movie theaters, if I recall. And all of these minus Lightyear, which Lightyear maybe at this point was just an ill-conceived idea and also a not-so-good movie, all these films were original properties. Let's look at the sequels for Pixar, which is a big thing. Incredibles 2, $608 million domestically, 2018. Finding Dory, $486 million domestically. Toy Story 4, $434 million domestically. Monsters University, $268 million domestically. Then you got the Cars films, which Cars 2 at $191 million, Cars 3 at $152. Inside Out, the first one itself, grossed $356 million. If this film already grossed $356 million on its first release, the initial run, before it was this kind of popular thing, I mean, the sky's the limits for Inside Out 2, especially if this movie is great, which this trailer looks great. This film, do I think the Incredibles 2 number of $608 million is in play? I mean, I guess it's in play. I would go the under on it. I don't think this film is going to gross $608 million. But is that Toy Story 4 number of 434 in play if this film is great and could succeed? I think that's more likely in play. I'd go the over 400 million. Toy Story 4 at 434. Do I go the over? I'm going to go the over. 434 million over for Inside Out 2. That's my prediction. What do you guys think? Am I crazy? Am I wrong? Let me know in the comments section below. And if you do watch this video, make sure to like and subscribe. It really does help me out. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of my show. I'll be back Tuesday with some reviews. Thank you all so much for watching. Take care.